Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the Marsh Under the Spotlight webinar on mental health and wellbeing for sports organisations. I'm Richard Tolley, the industry leader for Marsh's sports, entertainment and media practice, and I'm joined this morning by two of my colleagues, Lorna Feeney and Carl Chapman. Lorna works within our advisory team as the head of our mental health proposition for organisations, as well as assisting with our own internal mental health strategy on a global basis for our parent company, MMC. She is a qualified mental health first aid instructor and also a clinical hypnotherapist. Carl joined Marsh's sister company, Mercer, in 2017 as our lead client director, having previously been head of workplace health protection and wellbeing with a UK-based benefits consulting firm. He has worked with many high-profile companies in developing their benefit strategies, and through his media work is recognised as a thought leader and innovator in the employee benefits market. We're going to now close down our videos so you can focus on the screens, but we'll resume visual contact when we get to the end of the presentation. Okay, over the next 30 minutes, you'll hear from Lorna and Carl, who will provide some insights into why and how we believe sports organisations should be meeting this current challenge. And they'll also provide you with some suggested solutions as to the actions you could be taking. At the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So during the presentation, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens to either submit your questions or even your own observations and thoughts on the matters and points being highlighted and discussed. Just before I hand over to Lorna and Carl, and by way of setting the scene, we thought it'd be worthwhile to run through some of the background as to why this has become such an important issue, not just for the world of sport, but also the world of insurance and the future impact it could have. I think we're all fully aware of how widely the impact of COVID-19 is being felt across sport, from grassroots to elite. Cancelled events, restricted travel, lack of physical activity, virtually no mass gatherings, loss of earnings, lack of funding across all sports. All these are having major implications. And these implications are also having psychological consequences. Statistically, according to the British Association of Sport and Exercise Medicine, the prevalence of mental health symptoms and disorders in current elite athletes ranges from 19% for alcohol misuse to 34% for anxiety and depression. The prevalence of mental health symptoms and disorders in former elite athletes ranges from 16% for distress to 26% for anxiety and depression. These are worrying statistics. However, it is not just elite sport that is being impacted. The COVID-19 restrictions are also having an impact at grassroots level and with regard to young athletes. I think everyone on this webinar would acknowledge that physical activity and sports participation have a wide range of physical and mental health benefits for young people. Unfortunately, these same restrictions have also resulted in significant reductions in physical activity and worrying increases in anxiety and depression in young athletes. According to the British Journal of Sports Medicine, in a 2020 survey of over 13,000 adolescent grassroots athletes, it was found that 40% reported moderate to severe depression symptoms and 37% reported moderate to severe anxiety. In the same nationwide survey, it was found that the prolonged cancellations of in-person school may limit early opportunities to experience different sports and therefore undermine long-term sport participation. So I think the mental wellbeing challenge is absolutely real for sports organisations at all levels. I will now hand over to Lorna and speak with you again when we get to the Q&A parts. Please remember to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. Many thanks. Lorna, over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you very much, everybody, for having me today. So for this session, we're going to be looking at mental health and COVID impact of mental ill health, the law, financial, business and moral reasons, how to manage mental health in your workplace, and why address mental health in the workplace, summarising all the points that I've spoken about. As Richard said, the global pandemic has upset all areas of life, and sports is no exception. A huge impact on sporting events, fixtures, sports clubs and athletes, grassroots to media coverage. COVID-19 will have a severe and far-reaching psychological consequence for society's mental health. The effect is compounded, considering the implications of COVID-19 for all sports professionals, such as restrictions on training, periods of isolation, cancellation of games and competitions. So since Boris has given his speech, where he set out the roadmap of easing restrictions in England, there are very mixed reviews. For some, the thought of returning to the workplace full of people could lead to anxiety after working from home or being on furlough. Over a third of the UK saying returning to a normal way of working after the third lockdown in England will have a negative impact on their mental health. There are also employees who had not been furloughed. They continued working, some doing two people's jobs, possibilities of potential burnout and feelings of resentment. Furloughed employees enjoyed time off, paid, but also subjected to depression or anxiety as they have not been doing anything meaningful, being socially connected, or maybe not even left the house for many days, weeks or months. But on the positive side, 52% say they have a better work-life balance. 4 in 10 realise that they had a poor work-life balance before COVID. Perhaps now we should name it life-work balance and continue with this new way. Work-life balance, the division of time and focus between working and family, rest, leisure and activities, sounds simple enough in theory. But in practice, in the sports world, life's daily demands are often competing, making balance elusive. Clubs and organisations need to really encourage good work-life balance, as this can enable sport professionals and all different types of staff to feel more in control of their working life and lead the person to have increased productivity, less instances of sick and absenteeism, feeling happier, less stressed, reducing burnout, feeling valued and their personal and family life is important, improvements in employee mental health and well-being, more engaged, greater loyalty, commitment and motivation, and less likely to leave. Remember, sport is what they do, not who they are. They should be encouraged to take up other hobbies, such as learning to play the guitar, reading, art, movies. Advantages of improved work-life balance for organisations are that you become recognised as a business that people want to work for and therefore helping you attract top talent, increase competitiveness, productivity and boost staff morale, and leads to more committed and positive attitude in your players and in your staff. So let's look at the impact of the mental ill health. And these stats were before COVID. Our greatest sportsmen, women, are often regarded as superhuman, but when it comes to mental illness, no one is immune. Under normal circumstances, pre-coronavirus, 1 in 4 people will be affected by a mental health illness in a year. That means a quarter or 25% of people would be affected. It has now increased by an extra 37%, making it 62% of people are now affected by a diagnosed mental health illness. The Centre of Mental Health predict in England up to 10 million people, almost a fifth of the population, will need mental health support, 1.5 million of them being children due to the pandemic. There are millions of people involved in grassroots sporting activities experiencing a form of mental illness in some way. It is important that sport clubs at all levels appreciate this and know how to include people with mental health issues. Everyone involved needs to be encouraged to be confident and comfortable talking about mental health and mental health illness in the same way that people discuss physical health and physical illness and injuries. In 2019, the Professional Footballers Association reported a record number of football seekers seeking mental health support. Olu Maintain, football player, who was released by a Premier League club in 2019, commented, "No one wants to talk about emotions, and if you do, you're soft." To me, this indicates that there still is stigma, lack of awareness and education around mental health and mental ill health. These current uncertain times influence our mental health highly and can affect people who have never experienced a mental health illness before. So we really need to understand how, why, and what we can do to give us the best chance of not falling ill with a mental health condition, and how we can encourage support for others to get help and assistance they need. Let's look at the 3 reasons why you should improve mental health in the workplace. All businesses have a duty of care to their employees. The government and the sports sector are taking actions to develop mental health support under the Sport Review 2017. We have the Health and Safety Work Act 1974 and Management of Health and Safety Working Regulations 1999. Workplaces have always focused on the safety and welfare, but not the health. The HSE are now looking into this and asking employers how you can ensure the health, safety and welfare at work of all employees, especially around work-related stress cases. In October 2019, the HSE issued new criteria for investigating cases of work-related stress, saying that it will investigate if it receives evidence that a number of staff are experiencing work-related stress or stress-related ill health, but it's not of an individual case. This came about to do with a study, a case that happened in France. Unfortunately, 39 employees were involved and 19 completed suicide, 12 attempted to do so, and 8 suffered from depression or quit their job. The case was psychological harassment. The CEO and the 2 other directors were found guilty of psychological harassment and sentenced to 1 year in prison. And another 4 co-defendants were also found guilty and sentenced to 4 months in prison, and all fined maximum penalties. If your organisation has the IS 45001 international standard, you'll be pleased to know that they're now launching the IS 45003 in the summer. 95% of the content has already been released. So let's have a look at the financial and business benefits. Investing into looking after employees' mental health could see you with a return of £5 per every pound spent on preventative and proactive measures. Reduction in accidents and near misses therefore reduces claims and insurance premiums. Thames Water state that they've seen a 75% reduction in time lost due to injuries and an 80% reduction in time lost due to illness, since they've concentrated on health and well-being, combining physical and mental health. It also reduces the risk of employment liability claims. There is uncapped compensation. It's free to take an employer to court. If they believe they've been treated unfairly, they will go to court and the judge will ask, what have you got in place to support a struggling employee, from external and internal supports, and how do you routinely monitor everyone's mental health and well-being? There's also the attraction of new talent and retention of employees, and demonstrating your corporate social responsibility, as mental health is a global issue. So then we have the moral reasons. Moral reasons are based on the concept of an employer owing a duty of reasonable care to his employees. A person does not expect to risk life and limb or mental and physical health as a condition of employment. Society expects every employer to demonstrate a correct attitude to health and safety to his workforce. Combining initiatives listed on the slide and also Sport in Mind, Mental Health Sport England, State of Mind, and of course the FA's campaign using football to generate the biggest conversation around mental health, the Heads Together, Royal Family, and Heads Up, showing the world that mental fitness is just as important as physical fitness. Other ethical and moral drivers that organisations sign up to, such as programmes, will look to embed their values in mental health by working with like-minded partners. So how do we manage employees' mental health in the workplace? Professional sports people face a unique set of pressures, from scoring goals and winning trophies to facing media scrutiny and meeting fans' high expectations. This all makes for an extraordinary workplace, but it's still work. Line managers, coaches, clubs, governing bodies, player unions all play a role to help sports professionals manage their mental health at work. COVID-19 has really brought to light the realities of the vulnerability of our health. So we must use this opportunity wisely. We need to see how we can better our health and well-being, our families, and that of our teams around us. Although COVID has brought so much negativity, we should also strive to make some of its positive effects by the reins. We now have an opportunity to embed a mental health system into the workplace that allows adequate understanding, conversation, motivation, and destigmatization of the areas of mental health and well-being that are important to us across our diverse organisations. You can do this in any order. Build your strategy first, approach it based on your background, objectives, desired outcomes, identify and understand how employees and the business can benefit from investing in mental health. Employee surveys, interviews on mental health and general wellbeing will allow you to assess your approach so far and benchmark against your current arrangements. Governance, this includes company policies and procedures, roles and responsibilities. Understand the law to make sure you're compliant and lead from the top and ensure you involve health and safety and HR. Create a mental health wellbeing steering group. Interventions, we have line manager training, mental health first aiders, peer support champions, resilience training, CBT, mindfulness, occupational health, employee health and protective benefits, and employee assisted program, and partner with mental health charities. Communications is a big part. Communicate and create a marketing plan. Think of different ways you can get the message across. So how do we manage mental health in your workplace? So the government commissioned a major review in the workplace, and it was led by Lord Stevenson and Paul Farmer, who's the Mind CEO. They have since produced guidance on thriving at work standards in the sport and physical activity sector. In 2018, Mims Davis MP, Minister for Sport and Civil Society, published a mental health and elite sport action plan. One of its actions was to produce a specific sport-related resources to support the implementation of the Thriving at Work recommendations across the sport sector. Research shows that being active boosts well-being, but for people working in the sector, it can be difficult to talk openly about mental health and get support. The sport and physical activity sector is growing fast. It contributes 39 billion to our economy each year and employs more than 400,000 people. Money spent to improve employees' mental health has a consistently positive return on investment, so it's in everyone's interest to do more in this area. So we look at the 6 core standards. The first one is to produce and implement and communicate a mental health at work plan. But why have a mental health work plan? People who work in sport and physical activity can sometimes find it hard to talk about it, so getting the support they need will really help them to be able to open up and have an open culture. Developing a mental health at work plan is a great way to take a structured approach to supporting your workforce. If your organisation has signed the Mental Health Charter for Sport and Recreation, you'll already be making progress in this area. But if not, then it's a great place to start. Your plan should detail what support is available to employees if they're experiencing poor mental health, whether it's due to problems at work or outside work. A poor work-life balance can quickly lead to stress and burnout, which may lead to sickness and absence. So we have core standard 2 and 3, and having mental health first aiders you'll be able to complete core standard 2 and 3, helping destigmatise mental ill health, educating people on mental health, talking about mental health and sharing your story, encouraging open conversations about offering support for mental health, and offers of support should happen at every stage of a person's journey within your organisation, whether they're an employee, volunteer or elite athlete. Then we have core standard 4, providing employees with good work conditions. Providing good work conditions for all employees, volunteers and athletes, sportsmen, sportswomen, can help to prevent new mental health problems and support everyone with an existing condition to get in, work and thrive. Why do we have good people management? Why does this matter? For mental health, managers, coaches plays a crucial role in workplace wellbeing. Research shows that good line management is linked with good health, wellbeing and improved performance. Meanwhile, poor quality leadership has been linked with stress, burnout and depression. And for me, this is the most important one, routinely monitoring the employee mental health and wellbeing. Developing that clear picture of mental health in your business helps you understand what affects staff's mental well-being and how well you are supporting them. It's good to capture, routinely monitor and report. A regular mental health audit allowing staff to share their challenges and working together to identify solutions. We strongly recommend that all employees implement the 6 core standards, and we offer a free mental health survey so you're able to benchmark against your current arrangements against the 6 core standards. It has 13 questions and it is an anonymous survey. We can also help assist with implementing a mental health strategy and all your training needs. So let's summarise why address mental health in the workplace. There are lots of reasons that we've discussed, but there are some others on this slide just to remind you. We know that the sport and physical activity sector as a whole has its own unique challenges in relation to mental health in the workplace. This can include the high-pressured nature of sport at an elite level, alongside a high level of public scrutiny, risk of injury, and the impact of transition and working conditions. This includes working hours, seasonality of sport, extensive travel, and periods away from home. By implementing a clear mental health framework by using a Thriving at Work report can effectively support the mental health of your people across all areas of the organisation, including those with mental health problems, to remain in and to thrive through work. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass you over to Carl Chapman, who will talk through employee benefits and the help and support that Employer Solutions can have. And I look forward to answering any of your questions at the end.
Thanks, Lorna, and good morning, everyone. So as Lorna said, this section is really about how to create an effective mental health strategy. So the first slide I wanted to talk you through, I've labelled mental health the other pandemic. I think it's fair to say that mental health has been in the spotlight for a number of years now, but certainly has been exacerbated and the condition worsened as a result of the COVID pandemic. But the UK and globally, we were experiencing a mental health pandemic that's been in the media and a spotlight's been shone on that for a number of years now. I'm sure you all watched the interview last night. Just another example of people talking out about mental health struggles. Thankfully, some of the stigma and the barriers around mental health are coming down, but there's still a long way to go. If we look at mental health and COVID and the impact that's had, and we look at sort of UK PLC as a whole, there are some sort of telling and stark sort of numbers really, in terms of 8.1% increase in serious mental health conditions since the beginning of the pandemic. 1 in 3 working adults are concerned with losing their job. 54% of UK adults have felt anxious or worried in the past 2 weeks. And then if we sort of focus on the sports industry, I think it's fair and appropriate to say that it's one of the most significantly impacted sectors of the pandemic. Limited government funding, obviously an impact on broadcasting revenue. And it's, again, appropriate to say that it's probably impacted, or definitely has impacted, every aspect of sport. So therefore, it's the conclusion we can draw from that is that it's likely that what's happening in the UK and some of the stats I talked to on the left-hand side there, that's probably worse and exacerbated further within the sports sector. So in terms of a roadmap to support, what I want to focus on in this session is how to build that strategy through the 3 key stages, which are to understand, to design, and then to engage. So if we take the first of those, which is to understand, firstly, I want to focus on the fact that mental health is a very broad term. There are a number of contributors to mental ill health, and it's really important that we understand what is driving mental ill health within the workforce, within a membership. Before we can really target that problem, we need to understand what the problem is. And there are a few ways of doing that. So one is to use data. That could be looking at things like employee demographics, so looking at affluence, age, looking at people's home life situations, if that's known, so whether people live alone, for example. You could look at sickness absence data, so if you record sickness absence in good detail, there might be some information there that you can gather around what's causing people to take sickness absence in that mental health sphere. And then if you provide employee benefits, so things like group income protection, or also known as long-term disability insurance, medical insurance, employee assistance programs, or occupational health, again, is there data that you can gather from that in terms of claims? What are people accessing those solutions for, and what does that claims data tell us? What data gives you is a look at the past. So what people have claimed for in the past, or what people have had absence for in the past, and it gives you a snapshot of where people have had to seek help. So it could be through claims, through medical insurance or employee assistance programs, or it could be through taking a period of absence. The other option is to look at surveying, and what surveying gives you is probably a better understanding of the mental health risks within your population, because it gives you a single point in time feel for what those risks are, and it picks up on people that may be struggling, but it hasn't manifested in a period of absence, for example, or them claiming on some kind of insurance product. And surveying, as I said, for me would be the solution. Certainly for larger organisations. For smaller organisations, it may not be appropriate, and you can do more of a sense check and sort of keeping your ear to the ground and get an assessment that way. But certainly for larger organisations, surveying, and that could be part of a wellbeing survey, a broader wellbeing survey, or it could be part of a specific mental health survey. Really asking questions around, what are you struggling with, what's keeping you awake at night. Obviously phrasing it in slightly better way than that, but trying to get to that picture of what the health risks are within the organisation. And surveying doesn't have to be complex, and certainly we help our clients do that regularly at the moment, with taking that single point in time view of the health risks within the organisation. Once you understand what the health risks are, then you can build a strategy which is pertinent to those risks. So rather than taking a rear view mirror approach or looking at what others are doing, absolutely right to say that every individual is different, and therefore it goes, the conclusion you can draw from that is that every workforce is different. So trying to implement something similar to what others have done and hoping it works for your membership or your workforce is not the right approach. So breaking down mental health into different areas, if we look at financial stresses, some of the solutions that you might look at there might be around education, debt management solutions. So there are companies out there that provide debt, also provide loans to employees that are backed through payroll, so get really low interest rates because of that fact that they're guaranteed to get their monthly repayments through the payroll system, which again can help people get out of potentially payday loan cycles, for example. And also employee assistance programs. So an employee assistance program, for those of you that don't know, is a helpline. Sorry, we just flip back. An employee assistance program is a helpline, and what that does is effectively it can cover all areas of mental health in reality, but they have trained financial advisors at the end of the phone. They have legal experts. They have workplace law experts on there. They'll have psychotherapists on there that can provide things like cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's a bit like the Citizens Advice Bureau, but without the lengthy queues or delays. It's a really powerful tool, and that can be provided at a really low cost, at sort of £6 per employee per annum. When you look at work-related stresses, that could be things like line manager training. So ensuring that line managers are trained to spot the first signs of stress within an employee, or an employee struggling, but also making sure that line managers are aware of all of the network of solutions available to them and their employees. And I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment. Mental health first aiders, Lorna's talked to that, and also internal communication as well. So if people are struggling because of work-related issues, some of that could be perception-based, a fear of losing their job, but is that really founded in reality or just founded in rumour? And again, internal communications and making sure that people are aware of the true landscape, again, is a powerful tool. In terms of personal issues, resilience training, again, line manager training is an important one there. And then when you look at clinical conditions, then you've got things like private medical insurance or the NHS. Part of the problem, excuse me, with clinical conditions is sometimes accessing secondary care, because you have to often go through primary care, i.e. a GP appointment, to get to that point of access of secondary care. And at the moment, especially with COVID, people are perhaps a little bit reluctant to go to see their GP. So again, we're seeing more digital solutions become prevalent. So virtual GP solutions, which again is a fairly low cost solution that can be provided to employees or members, whereby they can get a GP appointment that same day within a few hours, albeit via your phone and via either a video conference or a telephone conversation. but those GPs are perfectly capable of then prescribing prescriptions or referring on to secondary care. So again, it cuts out that delay, but also cuts out that need to enter into a GP surgery, especially with COVID in mind. So lots of options there and solutions, but the important thing is to understand what the problem is before we target those areas. And finally, the third stage, and really important one is the engagement or the communication piece. With the best will in the world, you could build the greatest strategy around mental health in the UK, but if you don't facilitate access to that, educate people that it exists in the first place, then frankly, any time spent or money invested is wasted. So engagement is crucial. So again, we come back to line managers. So making sure line managers are aware of the solutions that are available to help employees. Don't just keep it a secret within HR. Make sure that everyone is aware. Have mental health first aiders again that are that are trained and understand the network of solutions available, and help those people become ambassadors for health. Signposter support, so that could be anything from putting posters of the EAP or whatever support is available on the back of a toilet door, or having wallet cards that are given out to employees or members. It could be having links on the intranet site, anything that makes it obvious and constantly reinforces that message that support is available and this is how you access it. You could create a wellbeing community. So a number of organizations put branding around their well-being. So when a communication comes out and it's branded under that brand, then the employee, the member, knows that it's well-being related, and they can either then access that or not, depending on their own situation. And I would also say use digital solutions where possible. Certainly for millennials, millennials have a desire to access almost everything through digital solutions, and they also have a 3-click mentality. So if they can't find what they need within 3 clicks, then they'll often switch off to it and get bored. Really important to ensure that everything is easily accessible, and use digital where possible. I mean, we have a solution called Ondo, which again, my contact details will be shared at the end of this, so anyone that wants to reach out around surveying, digital solutions, or any of the solutions I've talked about, then can reach out to me directly. So to summarize, I think the call to action here, and the one takeaway from my section, would be really do try and understand the health risks within your organization before you start to try and target or build a strategy. Use surveying if you can, and again, like I said, we can support with that, and my contact details will be shared at the end of the session. Do understand the mental health risks within the workforce. Do create a strategy that's aligned to those risks, and do educate managers to help them become ambassadors for health. Don't just look at physical and mental health in isolation. Absolutely key and true that mental and physical health are 2 sides of the same coin, and they are influential of one another, extremely influential of one another, but they're not exclusive to one another. As everyone on this call will know, you can have athletes that struggle with mental health, but equally you could have someone that is obese or struggling with underlying health conditions, but actually have really good well-being and good resilience. So they're influential but not exclusive. Don't copy one-off tactics. I've mentioned that rear view mirror approach. Don't just look behind you at what others are doing. Really do use data to inform and ensure that your strategy is appropriate to you and your workforce or your membership. And don't assume that employees understand where to access help. Again, that comes back to the comms piece. It's really, really important that everything is clear. Line managers are trained to help signpost people, but also employees can access treatment and support where they need to, and they know where to go to get that. I'll now hand back to Richard for any Q&As.
Carl, Lorna, thank you so much. Very much appreciated. We've got some time allocated for some questions. So I think the first one, Lorna, looks like I'm going to direct it in your way.
Okay.
What is the purpose of a mental health first aider, and how many do you recommend we train?
Yeah, so mental health first aider is how I view it is equivalent to a physical first aider. So like Carl said, we really need to be treating mental health and physical health the same. So this is a great way of putting a message out that you want to treat them both the same. How many you have? Well, for me, Mental Health First Aid England recommend that you have 1 in 10 people as a mental health first aider, but I believe that ratio is quite high. However, they back up by saying that you're more likely to come across somebody experiencing suicidal thoughts than you are having a heart attack. And also for mental health first aider, they've got a little bit more work to do than a normal physical first aider. A physical first aider is embedded into the business, so we don't have to go through the roles and responsibilities and put a policy around that. So it is new, and we have to make sure that they're embedded properly and make sure who's looking after the mental health first aider as well. But my personal opinion is to start off with train the same amount of mental health first aiders as you've got physical first aiders at the beginning, and then you can then assess to see if you need any more. But at least you're then helping to destigmatize as well mental health and physical health by setting the scene by putting in mental health and physical first aiders.
Okay, thanks. And I think probably sticking with you on for the second one, we've trained all our line managers. We have mental health first aiders, and we have an employee assistant program, but we don't actually know if this made a difference. How can you tell?
Yeah, well, actually, there's so many businesses out there doing so much great stuff. And the thing for me, what the most important thing is being able to wrap it all around it and be able to put a strategy in place. So if anything did happen, hopefully it doesn't, but if it went to court, to employment liability, at least if you've got a strategy in place and you use the 6 core standards, then you would be able to show that and present that. Well, actually, we demonstrated a clear, concise plan. We've trained our line managers, got mental health first aiders, and how we routinely monitor is we use different methods. We get stats off the EAP, we put it together with accidents and near misses, absenteeism days, put it all together, and then you can even put it as a board report. But it's really important. So there's no right or wrong way of doing things. When I work with clients, some clients prefer to do the training first because it's depending on how that they know their workforce. They know if the workforce are going to want to be involved in this, and it has to be from the top led down, but it has to be a full business, everybody understanding what we're doing around mental health. Or some people prefer to put a strategy around it. So by using the free survey that I offer, benchmarks against the 6 core standards, but also benchmarks against what you have in place as well. And you might find it might be only a couple of things that you need to just do to just make sure it's all wrapped around. You've got a strategy, but definitely you're doing great stuff. Just put the strategy around it.
Okay. And I think, Carl, probably for you, with regard to your call to action, if you were only able, or you could only introduce one solution, what would it be?
So yes, I think if you weren't going to do the data piece at the beginning to understand what the health risks are, and you were going to go straight into solution mode, the one that really covers all areas is the employee assistance program. So if you don't have that access to support available at the moment, then it's a really low cost solution, and if you communicate it effectively, can be a really powerful tool against mental health within the workforce.
Okay. And how would you suggest organisations track and monitor employees' mental health and wellbeing? Would you recommend that's done annually, twice a year, more frequent?
And personally, I would definitely do it every 6 months, because especially if you're trying to embed it at the moment, and then you can keep track. And also it's a great indicator of what's going on in the business. So if you do have mental health first aiders, make sure they fill out the confidential logs. There can be a little bit of confusion around that. It is a confidential role, but we really need to, we have got duty of care to the mental health first aider. So with them filling a confidential log, we will be able to know that they're being looked after. And actually, if there's the same mental health first aider being used all the time, how come that why is that? And we need to add more mental health first aiders in that area. So having a look at that, but it also will drive what initiatives you want to put into the business. So again, get your stats from your employment assisted program to see how many people are using it and what type of things are they using. Then you might want to do financial or if it's depression, anxiety on the mental health side, put in, bring somebody in to talk about it, do toolbox talks. But yeah, there's so much that you can do around that. But every 6 months, definitely for the start anyway.
I would just add to that as well that I think completely agree at the 6 month piece. I think, surveying should never just be a single point in time, one-off thing. It should always be a regular thing to assess the health of the workforce. But also, it's a really powerful way of understanding what you've implemented by way of strategy has had, whether it's had an effect or not. So you survey at the beginning, you understand the issue, you put in solutions to combat that. 6 months later, you survey again. What's the impact been, positive or negative? And then it can help you readjust and fine tune the strategy to ensure that you're constantly it's constantly relevant. And I think, if nothing else, COVID has showed us that the mental health landscape can change very quickly, and the drivers and the issues that people are facing can change really quickly. So to be able to monitor regularly means that you're staying on the front foot.
Okay. And then what do you suggest for organisations to focus on as employees are returning to normal office work?
Yeah, well, again, putting out the support. So, I have read between the lines, and I do think that it is 50-50 people of since Boris has said that 21st of June, everybody can go back to normal. I have actually seen quite a lot of people who are really worried about that and worried about another lockdown because they've been in their bubbles for such a long time, and other people are wanting to get out there. So we're going to have quite a lot of clashes here, but also we're going to have the same in the workplace as well. So I think, again, ask them how they're feeling, and also if they are a little bit apprehensive or anxious about it, what can you do as an employer to support them? So hopefully everything will be in place for it to be COVID safe. And again, we do focus on the physical side of the COVID safe, don't we? But we really need to try and look at the mental health side of it, of people's anxiety levels, and talk to them and ask them what we can do. But just make sure that you've got internal support for them. So if they've got a buddy or a mental health first aider that they can talk to, and as Carl said with the EAP, if they've got external, so just make sure that they know about all the supports around them.
Okay, and sort of linked to that, for employees working from home for the last 12 months, would you recommend a phased return to the office rather than a full return as soon as is allowed?
Yeah, I think again, is ask, don't assume. I would whatever the business needs to do, but if you can, and you can phase them, then whatever's going to be great for the business and the employee as well. But just be open with them, talk to them. Don't assume. Just make sure that you just open and talk to them all the time.
Again, I would add to that you could build that into any employee survey. Questions around, and it's probably appropriate to look at that now. With that 21st of June. Assuming the world gets back to normal, does that mean that all of a sudden everyone starts transcending on offices again and the world's back to how it was? Very much doubt that. There are questions around people that have been shielding, although they may have had the vaccine. We know the vaccine isn't 100% effective. What impact does it have on those people? Is there a chance here to re-look at the approach to having the old approach perhaps that the organisations took around having everyone in the office? And is there a new way to look at this and have people been as productive at home as they were in the office or in their normal place of work? So I think there's a bigger picture piece here as to how employers support their employees going forward. But yeah, to Lorna's point, absolutely ask the question, don't assume.
Okay. And we've had a couple of questions come in relating to the survey, Lorna.
Okay.
First of all, how they access, well, I can pick that up. Lorna's email address is shown. Please feel free to just drop her a direct email or contact your Marsh or your Bluefin Sports client exec, and they will have access to it. That's not a problem. And then in terms of the survey to our membership, Is it better suited just to their own staff, or could it be rolled out to their actual membership as well? So I'm thinking that's probably come from a national governing body. So is it their own internal staff who would use the survey, or could they roll it out to all their membership?
And well, I mean, you can use it for both. It's just really showing if people know about the supports in the business, who do they go to, and actually, I don't like to use the word roadmap, but how they can really get there to get that support, who they can turn to really. So it's just asking those questions around the 6 core standards. So, you know, it's entirely up to you. You can just do it for your workforce, or you can do it for memberships as well. You'll get the same type of survey results, and it might be good to have a look to see what they know about the business and who they can go to.
Just say on that as well, I would ask, I would always survey people that you have the ability to help, control, or influence. So you don't want to survey people that you then can't do anything for. When you survey, there's almost an expectation that when people are surveyed that there's something to follow from that survey. If you then can't do anything, you've identified an issue but you can't support or influence in any way, then it's probably not right to survey in the first place. Just survey those that are under your control to help ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay. We've had a follow-up to one of the questions that was raised earlier about monitoring employees' mental health and well-being.
Okay.
You talked about whether it should be annual or twice a year. The follow-up is there a particular survey question you would recommend? They've heard of a workplace well-being index survey. Would you recommend that?
Yeah, I mean, any survey what's going to be able to help the business, whichever you find is going to be useful, will be, as long as you can put a strategy in place. And you know, the government have commissioned that report, which is a Thriving at Work report, and the Wellbeing Index, what you're on about, is connected to Mind. So yeah, absolutely. You can go that way, or you can use other surveys, but it's very, very similar. It's the 6 core standards as well. So for me, it's about the duty of care and making sure that you're doing enough to look after the well-being and mental health of employees and demonstrating that. And the HSE do recommend either use the Thriving at Work report or the management standards, which is pretty much the same, really, as long as you've got that boxed off. But I do think the HSE will be coming in quite heavy-handed now, because as we saw about the case study in France, they're really upping it now to see how people are looking after their employees and work-related stress, and we need to try and drive the suicide rates down, and this is one of the ways that we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. Lorna, Carl, thank you. I think we've addressed the questions that we've seen coming in. So just to sort of wrap up the presentation, a big thank you for all those of you that dialed in. It's much appreciated. It has been recorded. A copy will be available. You can see on this slide the email addresses of Lorna and Carl. Please reach out to them, drop them a direct email, as I say, or contact via your local client exec in Marsh or Bluefin Sports. The survey is free, you can get that. Lorna's got a lot of detailed information around training, whether it's for the mental health first aiders, line managers, some of it's online. There's various support documents we can give you around the strategy. Carl, similarly, if you want to chat about the Ondo, the digital app, it's a great little app, and he'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you. So we're going to close the webinar down now. We'll leave those slides up for about another 60 seconds so you can note the email addresses. And just again, thank you on behalf of Lorna, Carl, and my colleagues at Marsh, Mercer and Bluefin Sports for your attendance. Thanks a lot.